He's cool. He's funny as well.
He has his moments. No, I'm joking. He's very funny. Kingsley, you're hilarious if you're listening. Talk to me. Is this your first in-person one? Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
No pressure. You know what I mean? Airplane mode, this was vibrating as well. All right, wicked, go. Whenever you're ready.
Going to do your intro. I want to see your reaction. Mo is a fitness lover who has transformed his life through running. He has made running content for some of the world's biggest brands and has accumulated a strong community of people who are inspired by his fitness journey. He ran to Paris in 4 days to support Parkinson's UK and SSAFA, the Armed Forces charity, and has participated on running panels and presented for the popular YouTube page, The Running Channel. He's the co founder of Vertex 33, a community that develops ideas to better the world through collective courage and social good. Vertex is currently raising money for charities and causes, some of which include Pakistan Floods Appeal, Afghanistan Emergency Relief, and Hope for Haiti. Mo is charismatic, driven, funny, and passionate about self development, health, and well being. I'm so excited to talk to him today. How are you?
Listen, after that intro, I'm excited to talk to me as well. Wow.
Oh,
That
energy.
that is that's thank you so much, one, for having me on the podcast. Honestly, I'm super grateful to be a part of this. I've tuned into your podcast from episode number one, and I just know that it's going to grow and grow and grow because this space is what I think a lot of people need. And you allowing people to have a voice on this space as well as providing your own thoughts is amazing. So I'm super grateful to be on this podcast. And after that introduction, I forget a lot of the things that I have personally done, but
Yeah.
thank you for reminding me. But yeah, no, thank you for having me.
100%. And before I even preface this interview, I want to tell you how proud I am of you. No, honestly, because you have literally, you're doing everything you said you were going to do. And I
Hmm.
remember when we had this conversation a couple of months ago, just randomly, we were talking about like our interests outside of work. And then I expressed mine. I told you about this podcast before I launched it, actually.
Hmm.
And you told me you were on your way to become an ambassador for running,
Hmm.
and you're doing just that and succeeding. So I'm really proud of you. And my first question is, I want to know, are you proud of yourself?
Before I answer that, I actually want to say I'm proud of you too because I remember that conversation and we were sat next to each other. So to the listeners back home, we me and Nara used to work together,
Yeah.
and we had a conversation, one of our first conversations, and she told me that she wanted to start this podcast, and it's something that she's wanted to do forever, and she just has never got around to it, and now that she's actually got around to it and is flourishing in it, so I'm super proud of you. But yes, to answer your question, yes, I haven't actually turned around and acknowledged it, but to say, yeah, I am proud of myself, and I am doing what I want to be doing, really. And I didn't think I'd get to this stage in my life this soon, to be able to leave, I guess, a job that wasn't right for me and pursue one of many of my passions, but pursue a passion and have that be the main source of income is something I've always wanted to do, and it's something that I'm currently living in, and it's a prayer of mine, and I'm currently living in it, and I'm super grateful that I have had this opportunity to do it. So yes, I am proud of myself.
I love that. And thank you very much as well, because I remember that conversation vividly. And it's so funny what can amount in a short amount of time,
Hmm.
because it really wasn't that long ago.
God's timing.
And I know, look at you, look at me sitting here today. So, what was your childhood like? Because I feel like I know Mo, but I
Hmm.
don't really know like Mo. Mo.
My child, okay.
Yeah, talk to me through. What was it like?
So child, like as a child, I wasn't ever in a like one location. I moved around quite a lot as a child. So being able to uproot yourself and then start fresh is something that I had to get used to doing. We like I was born in Egypt, obviously. That's where I'm from, I'm Egyptian. I was born in Egypt, moved to the UK, moved back and forth for many years. Even when we were in the UK, moved around to different primary schools. Eventually, found a primary school that I stayed in for the majority of primary, then obviously moved to secondary, but and then was moving houses in between. So again, to stay in one secure spot wasn't ever something that we'd done for a while as a family. And I think that really provided a sense of not instability, but an adaptiveness that I had to develop, and I had to understand that things aren't necessarily like we never had a family home. other than the one that we had in Egypt where the rest of my family are. We never had like a place that I can exactly call home, so, or somewhere I can return to. And it's just about, I guess, learning to adapt to different environments and being around different people, and understanding that it's not a situation where some people grow up having that environment or that stability, and just because I don't doesn't mean I can't be like them, or doesn't mean I can't have my friends over. It just meant that life would be a bit different to the rest of the people that I was around, and that's okay. And
Yeah.
how can I then create the best life for me? Obviously, at 8 years old to 10 years old, I didn't know this at the time, but it's how can I then create the best life for me with that being the case. Um, Growing up, beyond that, I was a very unfit child. A lot of
Really?
people look at the things I do now and think fitness was a big part of my upbringing. It really
Yeah.
wasn't. Like, I don't necessarily come from a health conscious family. I won't say my family's unhealthy, but like fitness was definitely not on the forefront. Of course, ethnic mums never think that sports or fitness can go anywhere. It's always stick to your books, stick to your education. So when it came to football, was a big part of like my upbringing, but it was something that was slowly like squashed in terms of that dream was like you rarely make it out.
Yeah.
And it's not just family, it's family friends, it's teachers that just say
Just
the
the culture in
likelihood. Yeah, the
general. Yeah.
culture really doesn't promote um, fitness as an avenue or entertainment as an avenue, because social media didn't exist back then. People, unless you were a celebrity, didn't have a way of creating or curating their own audience or
Yeah.
culture. And I think now that social media exists, everyone has their own platform. Um, and that takes the power away from these people or these industries and allows us to have that power. So yeah, it wasn't something I ever did, sports, fitness, running, anything other than football. But even then, it wasn't a thing that I thought I could take seriously. There was a period of time after that, so 16 to like 21, where I'd done no physical activity. In uni, I wasn't part of any sports teams, didn't play any football at all. So to get back into fitness was like a life changing point for me, because I feel like exercise is the foundation of building anything else. Like it gives you the vitality to then work on anything else you want to work on. So it's exercise isn't people's livelihood, but it should be a part of everyone's livelihood. I don't think people should go without some sort of movement. And people should find out what that kind of movement looks like for them. It doesn't have to be the same, but people should find out what that looks like for them and implement it into a daily routine. Um, so I guess that sort of answers how my upbringing led me to where I am. But I wouldn't say that people are their past either. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a past, but I don't think my past nor anyone else's past should influence the way they approach their future.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll get onto this, but that's the reason I don't necessarily agree with a lot of like therapeutic like methods, because it's always about uncovering your past, and excusing certain behaviors in the present because of what happened in the past. And it's not me
Right.
dismissing that, and I will get onto that a bit further on, but it's not me dismissing people's pain or trauma or upbringing, but it's to say that your past shouldn't dictate your future.
It's so insightful hearing you talk about your upbringing and how you almost felt like you never had that complete stability. And I wonder if this is why you're so driven as well, because I can relate to that, but in a different way, just in terms of being in different boarding schools. I moved around secondary schools a lot because I was just never 100% happy, or my parents always felt like a school could offer me better. And my parents also worked abroad while I was in boarding. And sometimes in my adult life, actually, and we can touch on this later, I find myself always looking for stability in everything, which is why a foundation is so important to me. And I think he plays a part into how driven I am and how I would say pretty focused, because I didn't have that stability or this type of stability I wanted. It's important for me to create that for myself. So I want to ask you, do you think that plays a part into how driven you are and how motivated you are? Because I would say you are very driven.
Definitely, I think the lack of stability is a reasoning as to why we crave stability in our adult life. I think not knowing, where you're going to be staying the next however many days, years, months, whatever, makes you want to have that kind of stability. But I think as well, it's triggered or inspired a adventurer side of me where I don't necessarily, at this current point in my life, anyways, want stability. Like again, I'm super grateful. Where I'm in the position I am. Um, but and then I sat down on myself and I thought, do I want stability? The reason I quit a 9 to 5 stable job was because stability just wasn't fulfilling me. I was on my way to, doing what needed to be done. I was about to purchase a house. I was about to finally settle down in this country and work my way up in a corporate role. And stability was there. It was there for the taking. And I thought to myself, like, long and hard, is this what I want, or do I now want to venture out and see what other possibilities are out there? And I think that adventurous side came from a lack of stability. I think knowing that regardless of that lack of stability, I'm still here and I'm still alive and I've survived that. So there's nothing that I can't survive going forward.
Yeah.
And I think the same goes for you, being apart from your parents or being at boarding school when you didn't have, your family close to you. It does make you driven, but it also makes you very dependent on yourself.
Yeah,
And
100%.
knowing that you can then tackle a lot more than you thought you would be able to. So I do think, yes, I would eventually like stability, but at this point, I'm willing to, sounds cliche, but like risk it all to,
Yeah.
to pursue exactly what I want out of life. And what I want out of life changes. It's never like the same.
100%.
It always has an underlying reason behind it. Always has my why or my purpose behind it. But the physical act of how I'm, you know, giving my gift to the world can change. And that's fine. That's fine to change
Yeah.
because adaptability is so important in life. And we can't necessarily control what happens to us, just how we go about dealing with what happens to us. What happens to us, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, stability is something that I do crave, but in this current moment in time, I'm willing to sacrifice stability for the betterment of my my life.
And I think as we evolve as human beings as well, our needs are different.
Mm,
And our needs serve us for different time periods as well, because what I needed 2 years ago is not necessarily what I need now.
100%, yeah.
So that plays a huge part. And I think as you've evolved just as a person, and even in terms of your career development from working a 9 to 5 to being self employed or having a different type of employment that
Hmm.
you wanted or you desired, your needs, of course, your needs are going to change because also you're looking at life through a completely different lens as well.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes people feel some sort of guilt for not having that same fixated view of life that they had before.
Hmm.
Because we're sold this fairy tale or this dream. Oh, yeah, you have to do this, and then you're going to have these guaranteed results. But life is really, it's really dynamic. And,
Hmm.
sometimes things just don't go the way you want it to, and then it just turns out to be an absolute blessing.
Hmm.
So, would you say that embracing change is something that has also led you to be more confident in your decisions of, say, for example, wanting to risk it all?
Again, 100% agree with you. I think the idea of change is so important. I recently put up a post about, change, and change is the only constant in life. Like change is the only thing that's guaranteed to happen. Nothing will ever stay the same. Like every passing moment, our physical body changes. Everything around us changes. Nothing will ever be the same. Um, and I think things like the pandemic that we all went through was such a big one for me because before the pandemic, I was working in the bank, and that was a industry I definitely wasn't a fan of being in. It was just not, yeah, it was just not for me. And I wasn't running at the time, so I'm like, and what I currently do is literally I run. That's where most of my life revolves around now. And because the gym's closed, I used to go gym, of course. Because the gym's closed, I was forced to adapt and find a new way to stay fit. I started training outdoors, and then they closed all the outdoor like training areas. and it was like, okay, what's left for me to do? Because I can either sit down, and a lot of people did, and I don't blame them for it because it was, unprecedented times. But a lot of people sat down and decided, okay, cool, there's no gyms, I can't do anything, I can't work out, I'm just gonna stay stationary. Some other people decided, when because they had the money to, is build their own home gym, and that's their way of adapting. I couldn't afford a home gym, and I couldn't go to the park anymore to train. So the only thing I had left was like to pick up something that I'd never done before, something I wasn't really a fan of, and I just started running. And I knew I wasn't a fan of running because I hated all my first few runs. Like I dreaded doing the run. I dreaded during the run. After the run, of course, you felt better because the endorphins and stuff. And then the next day you wake up, your legs are hurting, and you're like, "Ugh, I don't want to. I don't really want to do this." And then as soon as the gyms reopened after the first lockdown, I was back in the gyms, dropped running like immediately. And then it like something shifted, and it was I joined like a run club where I had, people holding me accountable. It was more than just myself. You find a bigger reason for running. And I just started to love it. And that was a part of, something that I'd never done before. I joined a run club where I didn't know anyone there. Um, and they were always intimidating to me. Like the thought of a run club or the thought of running with other people felt very not something that I do. I always train alone. I always run alone or ran alone before. And it was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna if I don't change, nothing will change. And I started running with the run club, and since then they've put me on so many other opportunities, and building a running community has allowed me to then get seen by these companies that I've now worked with, and all of that came because I was open and embracing to change. It wasn't because I decided to, and again, this is no insult to anyone that took the pandemic a bit harder than I did, but it was because I decided not to let the gyms closing affect me mentally to the point where I'm not going to leave my house and try and find another way to stay fit. Um, and opportunities come when you seek them. Like you have to put yourself in a position where the opportunities will come, and they will come. Like they will come. But if you're constantly torn between will this reap the benefits that I need to, you'll never find out unless you do it. Like you can always sit there and think, you know, eh, will this happen? And it's you can plan, and it's worth planning. But the best things in life happen when you don't plan them. And I think running was one of them. And now it's what I do full time. So I definitely think change is to be
Yeah.
embraced.
I agree wholeheartedly, and especially when you spoke about just being in a state of reception.
Mm.
I think that is so important as well because you just really never know when you have an open mind. And I think
Hmm.
sometimes it's easy to be comfortable, stick with what you know, stick with who you know, go down the path that you've been sold is going to guarantee a certain result. But
Hmm.
you were receptive to change and you were receptive to a community of new people that like you said, you never met before, and they have now opened doors for you to essentially have your dream career, quote
Hmm.
unquote. Can I say
Yeah. No,
that?
of course. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, have your dream career. And also, I'm sure you've built strong individual bonds with these people in this community.
Hmm.
So, what advice would you give to people who struggle with being more receptive to change?
Um. So I think people need to understand that change is scary. Like change isn't scary, but the point of fear is not to stop you from doing something. It's to I think the things we're afraid of most are the things that we need to do or the things that we need to face. Fear should be like a guide point. It should be like this is where your calling is. And once you get to the other side of fear, as Will Smith will say, the best things in life are there. Um, so if you're scared to do something, just do it afraid. Like it doesn't mean don't let your fear debilitate you from doing something that you want to do. Um, and don't get me wrong, that I say that like and take that with a pinch of salt. Don't obviously go into a jungle late at night with no backup, and there's gonna be like lions or tigers in there. Like that's not what I mean by fear, but the things that your body naturally will kind of stop you from doing. Um, and don't think that that is your body's way of protecting you. it was conditioned into you from very, very early, and all your thoughts are sort of conditioned into you from very, very early. And it's all the people, the teachers, the people that didn't make it. No one that feels successful in their life will ever talk someone else out of being successful. And
Word.
in the nicest way, I feel like a lot of the teachers that I had growing up, or a lot of the older people in my life as I was growing up, would tell me not to do something because they couldn't do something. And those thoughts and beliefs get ingrained into you, and you have to talk yourself out of it. The way you spoke yourself into it, or other people spoke you into it, you have to physically talk yourself out of it. I'm very big on self-talk, and if you don't feel like you want to verbalize those, I'm very big on journaling. You have to be able to write these things down, and affirmations are amazing. They're huge. And to be fair, if you sit down and listen to any sort of person that's made it in life, they'll all repeat the same things that you should be doing. So it's no coincidence that all of them done it to be where they are,
And I've had guaranteed results.
and have
Yeah.
had guaranteed results. If you just replicate what they have done, you will get maybe not identical results, but you'll get more results than if you don't do any of that. Like all of the journaling, the meditation, the affirmations, the visualization. If you do that, you will start to see your life change. And don't do it for a day, don't do it for 2 days. Do it for a month, 2 months, a year, 5 years, and then look back and see how much or how different your thoughts are, your behaviors are, and just how your life kind of attracts. Again, you got to be receptive to these things, and you can't be the same way. I don't feel like God puts people in positions they can't handle. Like so Islamically, we believe God does not burden a soul beyond more than it can bear. I feel also the same is God would not bless a soul for more than it can bear. If you're not at the position where you're ready to receive the blessing, because you haven't become the person you need to be to receive that blessing, become that person, set yourself up for the best possible outcome, and then watch as doors open that you didn't expect to open. They'll just fling open, and certain doors will close behind you, and you'll never look back. Firm believer in that.
I think we're only like, I don't know how many minutes in, but I think that's just already my favorite part of the conversation. And I don't know what's to come, because there's so many parts that I can just wholeheartedly agree with from personal experience. Even the last part of what you said about in Islam, how God doesn't give you much more than you can handle. Christianity also has that same
Yeah.
belief, but worded in a different way, and that immediately made me think of this quote that I know, which is opportunity and preparation equals to success. And I think it's so true, because when you are consistently doing the work, like you said, don't do it for 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, consistently do it. When that opportunity presents itself, it's almost like it's a perfect fit, because you're that person that you've trained yourself to become every single day. So it's like no brainer. Of course, I'm going to go in there and put my best foot forward, because that is essentially I'm my best self, and I love that. And also what you said earlier on about the people around you almost like imposing their fear onto you, that is something in my adult life as well I've had to forgive, because I do think as children we don't understand that fundamentally these beliefs that people are imposing onto us create self-limiting beliefs. And you wonder, like, you see certain people your age as well with the same credentials on paper, whatever, and you think, well, why don't I have the confidence to do the same thing that this person is doing? Not because they're better than you, because on paper you're essentially the same person, but it's because they have that confidence to do it. And that's one thing that I'm so 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 grateful for, and I think actually plays a part into my personal confidence. Is my mom always spoke life into me, and it makes me, in a way, it's done the opposite effect to me, because when I don't get that, I completely repel from a situation or a person, which is why I think unpacking those self-limiting beliefs are so important, because you can also find out where the root of this insecurity comes from. Because sometimes it's not even you, it's just what other people have told you that you are imposing onto yourself, and now you're believing it, and it's actualizing.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really important. And you mentioned Islam as well. One of the things I admire about Islam, just based off like research I've done and my Islamic friends as well, I love the spiritual discipline. that Islam teaches and practices, say even with Ramadan, for example. And I want to know, how does your fitness journey fit into that, and how have you been able to uncover that? Because I would only imagine it might be a bit more difficult because you are, you're fasting, you're also in a place where you're self-cleansing as well. Like, how does that work for you?
Um, so I think it works in many ways for the better. It serves Ramadan for me serves as a month to remember that fitness is an integral part of my life and it's beautiful, but it's only a part of this physical meta spirit like world that we're in. Fitness will ultimately make me a better person to everyone I'm around. It makes me healthier. I can live longer. There's so many positive benefits, but ultimately Ramadan reminds me that we get a month a year where we're reminded that this world is super temporary. Like, regardless of what you have to drop in that month to, realign your goals and your spiritual beliefs, everything can take a back foot because ultimately the next life is what matters. That's not to say that you should just then not do anything in this in this environment, or in this world. It's just to say that fitness isn't as important, as or nothing is as important as we make it out to be when you are reminded that you're abstaining from food, you're abstaining from doing anything that the temporary pleasures of this world. I think it's a lot more difficult when you are fasting to, of course, train, work out, but uh, it feels weird to say. You find a way, and I feel like God provides you with the energy that you need. If you're not getting it from food, and there's certainly ways around that you can biohack. There's certain foods you can eat that will obviously give you more energy than other foods, certain timings and stuff, or just making sure you get enough sleep. But all of that, again, Ramadan is not the time to work on your fitness goals. It's the time to maintain what you have and focus on the more important things, which are your spiritual beliefs, your connections with other people, your your faith, your family. That's what Ramadan is about. It's not a time to reach new heights in the fitness world. So fitness definitely takes a back foot for me when it comes to Ramadan because, again, more important things, non-worldly things, or even worldly things like your family, like your connections, like your practice. I think Islamically in general, the fact that fasting, praying, and everything else that we do supplements life so well. I think the habits that you instill when you're constantly, reminded to pray 5 times a day, or when you can understand that you can abstain from food and nothing happens, like you're not gonna die, you don't die. You realize that a lot of the times you sit down and think, you just naturally gravitate towards food as a means, as a vice, as a means of like your to get rid of boredom or to get rid of a feeling that you don't want to sit with. Ramadan provides you that time to really sit down and try and understand, why am I doing this behavior, and how does this behavior serve me. And of course, the fact that you can't eat just shows you that 90% of the time, when you are sat at home watching something on TV, or when you're doing something and you're automatically reaching for food, it's like, do I really need that because
It's
I'm
a filler,
hungry, or
yeah.
do I am I just filling my time?
Yeah.
Same thing works for like prayer. Prayer allows you, it gives you 5 minutes out of your day, 5 times a day, to like, just forget the physical world and forget all of the problems. Like when I go to pray at work, when I was used to work, it was like, all right, cool. Like I'm stressed now, but now I have 5 minutes to myself where no one can disturb me, and it's my alone time, and it's my chance to. You can use it as a form of meditation as well, and taking the time out of your day 5 times a day to remember that everything that is happening between those 5 times is temporary, and everything ultimately has no bearing on how you should feel, because you get that 5 minutes to reflect, ponder, and then approach the day with a new mentality. And the fact that it's 5 times a day and not just in the morning or not just at night just means that the more time you can spend reminding yourself that everything that you're going through is temporary, or that it actually ultimately serves no purpose, it's liberating. um then I believe, obviously, the other pillars of Islam, like your Hajj, so your spiritual journey, your zakat, so your charity giving, all of these things just give you a better life in the end, and they're all like practices that are taught in I
Of
think
the
most
religions,
Abrahamic
yeah.
faiths. Yeah. So I think it's not directly like Islamically a thing. There's a reason they're in our holy books. There's a reason that
100%.
there's a wisdom that God has that we humans could never comprehend, and sometimes you do have to blindly follow these to then understand on the other side. Like um a lot of self help, or a lot of like the personal development world is just telling you what our religious books were telling us to do years ago,
Yes.
like thousands of years ago.
Yes.
So only research now is starting to support it, but that's the
Yeah.
wisdom of the God I serve personally.
That's so true because just a bit of backstory. I'm a
Go on.
Christian, and when I started to read a lot of self development books and sort of like uncover my personal spirituality, I would say I'm actually a really curious person. So it got to a point where I was just challenging a lot of what I was taught, and I was just reading a bit about different religions and reading a lot of books. And I remember vividly, just about 2 years ago, for Christmas, I asked my mom for this book called the seven the seven spiritual laws of success, and she read about the author's like bio, and he's not Christian, he believes in like new age spirituality and things like that. And my mom like sent me this message back basically being like what are you doing, like
Yeah.
why are you trying to tie yourself into all of this? But I just completely discarded it, and I was like I'm grown, I just want to read the book. It was recommended to me by someone that I really admire, and I was just curious. And after reading the book, and also after reading a lot of self-development books, I can agree with everything that you've said. A lot of these books are just teaching us things that are pretty much ingrained in religious beliefs. It's just worded differently, or they use like other words to substitute the God that we serve.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because a lot of religious beliefs are essentially the pillar of morality and what we see as right or wrong, and what we as a society collectively agree to. So it's really interesting when people kind of challenge that but don't do research into it, because I do think if we really unpack our sense of morality, it ties into what like religions essentially believe
Yeah.
are correct. So I love that you said that, because it's something I've actually been thinking about for a while, especially when people challenge like self-development books as they see it as almost like a means of replacement to like Bibles or
Yeah.
Qurans or like holy books. But in actuality, I think the authors of these books are pretty much just regurgitating what is
100%.
in.
Manifestation is just
Yeah,
prayer.
it's
It's literally
literally
prayer.
faith.
Yeah.
If we, it's literally
It's yeah.
it's literally faith stripped down. But again, I think like it takes a certain level of like curiosity to actually do the research yourself instead of just discarding it.
No, definitely. There is something that you touched on earlier that I wanted to question you about, if that's okay.
Yeah, go on.
So you were talking about how it's worth unpacking your limiting beliefs, especially the ones that were imposed on you from childhood. How would you tangibly go about doing that? Like, what stages of action would you put in to unpack those beliefs, in your opinion?
I think, to simply put it, unpacking your insecurities. So say, for example, I don't want to use a personal example, but say someone is really insecure about, I don't know, applying to jobs, for example, right? Why are you insecure about applying to jobs? Is it because you don't think you're qualified enough, or is it because you don't feel like you're worthy enough? Or even putting like a relationship sense, if you meet someone that's really amazing and treats you well and is everything you said you always wanted, why do you feel like you don't deserve that? Where does that come from? Because naturally, as human beings, we're not wired to think we're not deserving of something. I think that stems from a deeper level of insecurity that has, could be your childhood, or couldn't be. It could be something else. Maybe it could be what you consume about yourself as well, and the people
Yeah.
you surround yourself with. So I think those are tangible steps. Really, just questioning the why when you have an insecurity. I even do this to myself, to be honest. Like, okay, yeah, but why? Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
And then when I know where it's coming from, I can actively do something to change it.
Yeah.
So that's what I
No,
would say for
definitely.
starter.
I think that's so powerful that, you know, we say we're not created to like be insecure.
Yeah,
Like we
we're
are.
not.
I think, and again, this stems from faith. But if you don't believe in faith, then you can just believe in stats or science. The likelihood of you existing is infinitely small. Like it's unbelievably small. We personally obviously think that God created us in His image, or God created us with deliberate. Like God don't make mistakes. So for the fact that I exist means that I was part of God's plan, and I was, you know, and the fact that just the matter that as a matter of fact means that I can't be insecure. Like
Yeah,
I just can't. I
100%.
am.
You're
This
Mo
it can
and
come
you're
across.
here.
Yeah,
No, I don't.
it can come
In
across so pretentious, but I think I'm God's gift, and I
You
think everyone that
should
exists
think we're
is
God's
God's
gift
gift.
too. And I'm not being funny. If this might come off really strong, but I feel like if you listen to my podcast, you have to think a certain way. You have to think highly of yourself. That's just a starter. We can unpack that because
For
I think to really enforce a lot of things we're talking about, it really just that's why I wanted my first episode to be about confidence because I think it really is the pillar into everything. And even you saying you are God's gift, why should that come off in a negative way if
Yeah.
you don't have an insecurity about yourself? Do you know what I mean? When
Yeah.
you're saying I'm God's gift, I'm like, yeah, you are God's gift.
Yeah. No,
If you
facts. And I
feel
think
any type of way about that, I think you need to question yourself and think, why does someone saying they are God's gift or someone feeling good about themselves make me feel less than?
Yeah.
And that's why I go back to saying, question the self-limiting beliefs. Do you know what I mean? But I say all of this to say we do have a purpose. I'm going to touch on this later on with a question I have to ask you, but if you also try and look at life through that lens, I think a lot of things also make sense.
Yeah.
Because it's not something you uncover like at 18 or 21 or 25 or 30 or 40. There's no guaranteed age. But I do think if you believe you have a sense of purpose, a lot of your actions would then start to change.
Yeah.
Because you view yourself differently. You
Yeah.
know you're not just here for the vibes.
Of course,
Which you
yeah.
can be, but
You
I'm here for
can
the
be,
vibes
yeah.
too, but I'm also here for a bigger thing
reason.
that God has called me to do it. Because if not, we can't just be here like
Yeah.
I mean, but again,
Yeah,
personal
each to their own.
beliefs.
I think the people that are listening to your podcast will agree with us. There's you
Yeah.
know there's a certain level you get to when you start seeking more knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's when you're tired of being misinformed. So that's stage one. I think stage one is trying to find the knowledge and informing yourself. And then stage two is really like applying that knowledge. There's a fine line or a big difference between knowing what to do and doing what you know. And I think, I mean, a good coach or life coach can tell people what to do. A great life coach can make them do what they know to do. Like I think there's a big difference between people that can just talk to people, tell them the right information, and I don't think we live in an age where information is hard to come by. Don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of misinformation, especially in my industry, so the fitness industry. So many people would spread a misinformation. But I think more often than not, people know what they need to do to get fit or to lose weight or to be healthier. The challenge is getting them to do that.
Right.
And that's where different practices come in. And that's where I think there's the best coaches in the world know how to make people, you know, follow through on, you know, eating healthier, working out more compared to, I don't think anyone is misinformed about how to be healthy.
Yeah.
Like everyone knows what's healthy and what's not healthy to an extent. I just don't think a lot of people can, you know, get themselves to physically do that. And that's where I want to change. Yeah.
That is really profound. And one of the things that I personally want to start doing, not only because, again, like spirituality or religion also talk about this, but there is scientific research about the benefits of fasting. And that's one of the things I want to talk to you about because, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been practicing Ramadan since you were a child, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say are some personal benefits that you've gotten from fasting? And has like that experience been for you?
Yeah. Okay. I think I'll just quickly touch on exactly what fasting is in a religious sense, because I get asked every year, so it's just worth saying it. It's just abstaining
For the
from,
record.
yeah, for the record, it's abstaining from food and water, and any sort of, it's not just abstaining from food and water religiously, but like the actual fast itself is no food, no water from sunrise to sunset. Physical benefits beyond obviously the fact that can think more clearly after the first few days. Like once you start getting used to it, you can think more clearly because you're not going through insulin spikes and sugar crashes, and just your focus is a lot more. You Most people lose weight just because the eating window is so small, they can't physically fit enough calories in that time to you know gain weight. You can if you want to, but a lot of people struggle to. So a lot of people lose weight, or a lot of people use Ramadan as a chance to lose any extra weight that they've been carrying. But for me, Ramadan is more about the mental and spiritual benefits. There are countless physical benefits, just the way your body processes food, the way your digestion system just needs a rest. Just like 9 to 5 is so arbitrary, it exists only because capitalism says so. Eating 5 times a day exists because the food industry wants to make money. There is no evidence in our like prehistoric history
That's so
of
true.
having to eat 5 meals a day. And there's no evidence to support necessarily that being the best for your digestive system. Your digestive system shouldn't be working 24/7. Like you should go periods of abstaining without food, not necessarily water, but without food. And even beyond Ramadan, people, and not just Muslims, like a lot of people in the personal development industry will go 3 to 5 days of just a water fast. So where you don't, and I've done that. I've done that myself. So I've done a 72-hour water fast, and the things that I've learned from it is, again, a lot of the food that you eat is you're eating out of habit more than anything else, habit and boredom. You find that after day one, you start to realize, okay, cool, I don't actually need food, or as often as I think I need food. You still have your energy. Your body is capable of producing energy, just like our ancestors went days without food. They were still had enough energy to go and hunt and capture their foods. Like you just need you need your water, and you need the ability to understand that food is just a source of fuel, and it should be enjoyed. Don't get me wrong, but it's not something that you can't go without for a period of time, and you just feel like, especially in your stomach, abdomen area, just a lot better. Like your digestive system has got a rest.
Yeah.
Your sleep is a lot better because you're not trying to digest food overnight. Especially a lot of people would go to sleep just after they ate their last meal, or they're watching something at night and snacking away, and then they're going to try and sleep while watching something, and it's like you're doing yourself such a disservice when you do things like that, because you're going to get poor sleep. Poor sleep is going to lead to another insatiable appetite the day after. You're going to be hungry, you're going to be full of cravings. So I think Ramadan, your sleep might take a hit, but again, it gives you something, because you're eating so late at night and then you're going straight to sleep. But it gives you other benefits as well. Fasting for me is something that I try and do more often than not throughout the year as well. I intermittent fast personally.
I was just about to touch on that, because when you were speaking about our digestive system and not necessarily wanting to work that, like, throughout the day, I was probably thinking that's why intermittent fasting is so effective, because you have that window where you can actually give your body time to process what you eat.
Yeah.
And then it restarts itself, and it makes sense to me more logically as well, because how else are you just going to store all this food in your stomach and then not have that? But yeah, sorry, you were
Yeah,
saying
no, I was
something.
good. I think people intermittent fast incorrectly, and they do it for the wrong reasons. Intermittent fast as a tool for weight loss makes sense. Intermittent fasting will not make you lose weight. You can use it as a tool to, shorten your eating window, so you're less likely to eat more food. But you can gain just as much weight eating one meal a day, if that is a really, really big meal, than not eating at all. I personally don't like pushing my breakfast. I would rather bring my dinner back. So when I say I fast, it's probably my last meal will be about 5 p.m. Go to sleep anywhere between 8 to 10. Wake up and have my first meal at like 9 a.m. So that's a period of time without food. But I wouldn't then, a lot of people intermittent fast by waking up at 6, 7 in the morning, won't have their first meal till like midday. So I feel like your first 6, 7 hours without food for me, especially because I go gym in that time, I do the most work that I can in that time. That's when I need food as my fuel. Um, and I'd rather not eat close to bed, like I said. So it's a lot. It's
Yeah.
so I don't digest overnight. That's just personal preference, though. And it's not when people say you intermittent fast. It's not about doing it every day. It's about doing it more days than you're not doing it. Just like with everything in life, there is no it's all or nothing mentality, and I'm sure people, and I've suffered from it myself. Is like you don't there is not everything in life is black and white. In fact, nothing in life is black and white. Like you can say murder is wrong and I can say what about self-defense. Like there's nothing that's black and white. Everything is gray and everything has context and everything has reason. If you take away the all or nothing mentality and just be like, okay, cool, maybe I can't intermittent fast every day, or maybe I didn't today, but I can try again tomorrow, or I can do it more often than I'm not, or I can eat healthy more often than I'm not. You don't just have to cut out chocolate, sweets, blah blah blah. McDonald's, have McDonald's. There's nothing wrong with. There is something wrong with McDonald's, but there's nothing wrong with having it in moderation.
Yeah.
You know, and we're not robots. Like human beings are very emotional creatures. So trying to
Like me.
no, but trying to, and this is where, like I say, a lot of people know what to do. A lot of people don't do what they know because we don't think with logic. Humans don't think with logic. We think with our emotions, and you can try and strip people of their emotions, but what are they after that? Well, they're just robots. Like we're humans, and it's about being able to manipulate our emotions to support us and serve us in the best way that we know how. And I think a lot of our emotions is going on a tangent, but I think a lot of our emotions stem from habit. Like our thoughts are habitual. We don't these thoughts that we think these thoughts are just our thoughts because that's who we are, but they're not. They're our thoughts
Yeah.
because that's how we were told to think before. And I love to say we're a mosaic of everyone that we've ever come across,
Yeah.
into contact with,
I
and
believe that.
everyone like has their effect on us, and their thoughts become our thoughts. But this is a quote, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I can't remember exactly. It's until you make the unconscious conscious, your habits will continue to rule your life, and you'll just call it fate. Like, and I think people forget that it's not like a lot of life isn't fate, or things don't just happen to us, and it's not. Oh, this is just the way I am. There's a lot of unconscious beliefs or unconscious thoughts that are leading you to choose these wrong things or choose this like the chocolate over the apple. It's not because you have certain cravings, is because you're not sitting down and trying to make your unconscious behaviors and thoughts conscious, think about them, and then do something about them. You always have to think, how is this serving me? Every thought that you have, go spend a week, spend like literally a day of just write down every kind of negative thought that pops into your head and question it.
Which is
Make
what I
it
was saying
conscious,
earlier.
question
Yeah.
it, and
I
just
think
see
so.
see how much of that just pops up without you even being aware of it,
Yeah.
and then deliberately change that. Like you need to deliberately, with affirmations, with other things, question it and change those thoughts, and you'll find over time that you start, like I can't not go gym now. That's just something that my habits lead me to go gym. I feel weirder not going gym than going gym, whereas I don't have that resistance to go gym anymore. And that's not because that's the way I was, and that's it's just the way I created my life to be, because I made it a conscious, deliberate practice until the habit now is ingrained, and that's how my brain serves me. So I think people need to just sit down, take some time to be aware, conscious, and present, question their thoughts, and change for the better.
I love that. And on your YouTube channel, you mentioned that in the morning you practice something called savers. Is that something that you practice? And can you break down? That was actually the first time I heard about it when I was watching your video, and I did some research into it. I realized I actually do some of these things like just as my morning routine that I've developed over the years. But I think having that acronym is such a great way to explain the importance of it as well, because when you break it down,
Yeah.
what it stands for, I think it'll be a great way for people to also have active steps to make change in their morning routine.
Yeah. This was a while ago when I wrote that, so I can't
If
even
so,
remember
I've
what it
got it
stands
here.
for. But I know
Okay, I've got it
S
here.
is for
Silence.
silence. So silence, of course, the best way to start your day, and this it allows you to clear your head first thing in the morning, is meditation. I firmly believe meditation is like so important.
Same.
And again, just because you don't meditate every day doesn't mean you're not a quote unquote meditator. Like, you do it more often than not, and you start to realize that you don't feel necessarily the immediate benefits of meditation. Sometimes you do when you're stressed and you do something like box breathing. Box breathing is like 4 seconds inhale, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds exhale, 4 seconds hold. That you'll feel immediate relief, and the release of tension within your body. But a lot of the habits that are in savers doesn't have an immediate like reward. But over time, you'll start to realize, oh, you know what? I haven't really been angry today, or things haven't triggered me the way they used to. You get caught off in traffic, and you're like, is that you just get less phased by certain things, and that's when you start to realize, okay, cool. I've been meditating for 3-4 months now. I'm seeing the results, and that's gonna make you want to meditate more. So yeah, S savers meditation, silence, and that's how you start. Then it goes into A, which I believe is affirmations.
Yeah, which we've
If
spoken
I'm not
about.
mistaken, affirmations, again, so powerful. Everyone that is I've ever met that is successful does it. And it's all about, like, you don't have to look in the mirror and be like, you are great, or you are this, or you are that. Like, it doesn't have to be as um like upfront as that. Sometimes it could just be a mental note of when you hear yourself starting to doubt. It's like, just call back to times where you've done things that you were afraid of doing and overcame them, and still, managed to make it happen. And just affirm yourself, affirm the confidence. And if you can't do something because of fear, do it afraid. Like, that's the only thing I can say. Actions are always gonna trump your emotions. And just because you don't feel like doing something, if you live your life only doing things when you feel like doing them, you got a long journey ahead. Like, you got a long life.
And I think the quicker we accept that, the better our life.
One
Because
million
I
percent.
feel like recently as well, I've really had to ingrain that into myself. Because I'm like, okay, this is not just like you were saying earlier on, human beings are very emotional. I am so emotional. And sometimes that really plays a part into my productivity and just like my day to day habits.
Yeah.
But the real challenge comes with discipline and consistency, is not doing things when you feel like it, because there's no way you're going to feel the same way every single day anyway. So there's no way you're going to be able to just run on that high that you might not have every single day.
Yeah.
But like you said, you really have to do things even when you don't
Do
do
things
it
anyway.
anyway.
Agreed. No, and I think a lot of people try and put too much thought into their thoughts. That sounds a bit weird, but it's like, not every thought that you have, one, even comes from you. I know it's from inside your brain, but not every thought you have to act upon, or every impulse has some sort of meaning. And that's the case. Like, a lot of people, like, I'm too tired to go gym today, as an impulse thought, and then they go to the gym and realize they had more energy than ever. So physically you had the energy, but your thoughts were telling you didn't. A good example I use is, have you ever been at a red light and thought, you know what, let me run that? Did you run it? No, but you had the thought to. You don't have to entertain every thought that comes to
Yeah.
mind. Just like you might be craving something sweet, but then 10 minutes later realize that you weren't actually. And that's what I feel like
Yeah.
fasting allows you to do as well. It allows you to question these thoughts, or sometimes don't question them but completely dismiss them. Not every thought that comes in. I've had thoughts to, just kick a baby in the shins when he's screaming too loud. Like, I know that sounds so mad, but sometimes you have those thoughts. It doesn't mean you have to entertain them, and it doesn't make me a mad person. I'm sure everyone's had like dark thoughts as well. You don't entertain those thoughts and you don't act upon them. So why do you then associate certain, you know what, you look ugly? Why are you entertaining that thought? Just because that thought came from your head doesn't mean that is now what you have to attribute yourself to. Just dismiss it. Like, have conversations with yourself. I know it sounds weird, but
No, it's not. I love that you mentioned that, because again, not to go on a whole like repetitive vibe, but a lot of people that you speak to that have been successful and have written like even just life experiences, even when they give advice, you do see a common trait, and that's why even sometimes I feel like self development books once you've read a certain amount, but that acronym's savers
is so profound because I think it's just like a foundation of everything that you need to know to really develop yourself on a
Hmm.
practical level. And the next one is visualization. And I want to talk to you about that because I don't know many people that actively have these conversations about visualization.
Hmm.
This is something that I learned and I do literally every single night. Actually, I daydream. Anyway,
Yeah.
and I always tell my friends like just give them tips. And again, manifestation, a form of visualization, is always a
Hmm.
strong part of manifestation. But I want to know if you've had any personal experiences with visualization, and what do you visualize, if you don't mind sharing.
No, of course, no. I definitely have had experiences with visualization, and there's a test that Tony Robbins does a lot, which is I can't do it now, but it's about getting people to visualize something, and then you seeing the immediate like result of that, and then you start to like you understand that it's not just a heebie-jeebie tree huggery thing, like it's a physical change in your brain, and your brain again can't tell the difference between like real life and what you
True.
vividly imagine. And the same way, like even mirror neurons work. When I see you going through pain, the same neurons will light up in my brain of that sensation that you felt. Not necessarily I'm going to feel it, but that part of my brain will light up. Um, and the brain is constantly changing. Like our brains aren't fixed anymore. There's neuroplasticity science to prove that brains can change. The pathways can get thicker or fizzle out. And I think the more you visualize, the more opportunities or you welcome, because you are putting yourself in that space of someone who. So I personally visualize like my best self, and what does that look like, and what does that person behave like, and what kind of like what does their day look like, what is their routine, how do they wake up, how do they go to sleep. The
I do
more
that
you
too.
do that, I'm not here visualizing a mansion or my dream car, which you can do. Don't get me wrong. You can visualize how it would feel to get a mansion and how it would feel to get a dream car, and that allows you to then provide you that sense of motivation to want to go after that. But me personally, I'd visualize, what does my day look like? How does this person tackle this challenge? So when this challenge comes, I don't have to think, how am I going to tackle it? I already know, because I've visualized it. I've already come to terms with, okay, cool. This is my best self, or and your best self will constantly change. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've reached my best self, realizing that I was thinking way too small. I was like, rah, this is
I
that
love that.
I can grow so much more,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Like you don't have to have your final Super Saiyan 10. Like from now, you can visualize Super Saiyan 2 and constantly work from there. But I think yeah, personally for me, I visualize what I do in a day, what it looks like, and how I can then achieve that. And when you start to visualize it, it allows that person to come a bit closer. I don't know how to. It allows you to. It's like you tether yourself to
Yeah.
your future
It's more
self.
tangible to you as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
And you
Yeah.
can align yourself to that goal because in your head, automatically, you're starting to associate yourself with that goal, that person you
That
want to
person.
be. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people think of our future selves, or even time, on like a linear scale, and I think it's a lot easier if I could draw a chart, but I'll just try and explain it here. The Picture us in the middle, picture our past here and our future here. That's not the way time works. Time, we don't move through time. Time moves through us. And if we are constantly stationary here, if we want our future self, if we want to get to our future self, we have to almost picture us pulling that person in, and we pull them in by behaving more and more like this person. So the more you behave less like this person, the further and further away that person will go. Not because, and the closer another version of you will come in, but you constantly, things are moving through you. You're not moving towards them. So
Yeah.
if you want the best future self, do what they would do today, and that person will slowly make their way towards you. The more you do things another version of you would do, the unhealthy, the bad habits person, the closer they will get towards you until they ultimately become you. Time doesn't change. We only have now. That's the
Now.
only time we have.
Yeah.
So what we do with now is what is going to create that future person coming towards us. Um, And that's why visualization helps you tether to that person, so you understand what they do, how they act, and then bring them closer to you. That's why visualization for me is so important.
Love that. So well said. The next acronym is exercise, which I think we've spoken about a lot. So
numerous benefits.
We can go to the next one, reading.
Reading. So
You're an reader.
I love reading. I don't read as much as I used to, just because life's getting a bit, very, very busy. I still try and make time for it. But reading is so, so, so important. Like I don't understand why you have access to you have access to podcasts like this, and you have access to myself, but now I have access to CEOs. I have access to people that have lived 2,000 years ago. I have access to the smartest people that have ever lived. Why would I not want to have a conversation where I'm learning from them? And just they know what kind of questions I want to ask, so they've put the answers in a book already. Why would I not want to know that answer? Like, why would I see a successful person make a book about how they got to where they got to and not read that? It makes no sense. Like, it makes no sense as to why you wouldn't. And you don't have to consume books through, physically reading them. Audiobooks are amazing as well, podcasts or like informative things. But just because the sheer, I think, the effort that reading requires forces you to zone in and really take in that information. There's also passive and active reading. So one of the first books I ever read was How to Read a Book. It's a good book.
I saw it was on your Instagram recommendations as well, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's so interesting. I need to read that. It's actually on my list now.
So a lot of people read books and they've never been taught how to read. And that book kind of splits it into active, passive, and different kinds of reading. And I think active reading is obviously when you're reading, making notes about it's revision to an extent. And it's like a lot of times you've read a page, or you read 2 pages, or you read a book and you just forget everything that you read immediately. I don't know if that's just me or my lack of attention sometimes, but it's like I literally can't remember what I just read unless something like strikes out at me.
I'm the same, especially studying law. That was a real struggle for me, which is why when I was watching your Instagram highlights and I saw that book called How to Read, I was actually thinking I should have read this years ago. This would probably honestly be so much more beneficial, because you're right. There are times where you spend 2 minutes reading a page, or I don't know, even less than, and you're just I literally don't remember. I couldn't tell you.
The words went into my brain and went straight back out. Yeah, so it's definitely worth reading if people want to understand, I guess, their best way of reading a book. But I try and active read as much as I can, and make notes. But I think reading, so I'll put it in, I guess, as an example. So when you're driving down the road and you're trying to get from England to Southampton, for example, and you're using GPS, let's not say GPS, let's say you're using a map before GPS was invented, because now we have, satellites that can project pictures of the Earth. How did people used to travel from England to Southampton? They used maps. How were maps invented? Because someone went from England to Southampton, marked the roads. For me, books are someone that's done what needed to be done. So I don't go from England to Southampton after reading the map and still doubt that if I take this road, I'm not going to end up in Southampton. So books give you, good books anyways, give you a tangible approach to how this person done what they did to get to where they are. And if I do exactly what they did, I will get to where they are.
Yeah.
So it's the same way as reading a map. You don't read a map and be like, oh, you know what, the map was lucky, or this person was lucky to get to Southampton. You know that these are the steps they took to get there.
Yeah.
And regardless if it's nighttime and I can't see what's in front of me, or I can see one foot in front of me, I know eventually if I follow this path, I will get to the final destination. And that's why I think books, especially from professionals in their field, are just the best, because it's a guidebook. It's literally how to get to where they got to. And I think if you copy the same results, if you copy the same actions, you will get the same results.
Yeah.
It's like cooking.
Do you drive?
Do I drive?
Yeah.
I can drive. I don't have a car.
Do you know what I
at the moment? Why?
I feel like you use a lot of driving analogies
when
you explain things.
I think,
which is pretty cool. But I was just curious.
No. I cycle a lot at the moment. Okay. It's too expensive to drive in London.
Tell me about it.
But yeah, no, have you read like a baking thingy, and you just follow the recipe exactly, and you get exactly what they
you
got.
want,
Like
yeah.
so, it's the same thing with books in general.
Yeah.
So I think having access to the greatest minds is so important. And the physical act of reading or the behavior of reading as well. There's so many benefits to it. Can't list any off the top of my head, but I know that that concentration and other things contribute. So definitely add reading into your morning routine as well.
What would your top 5? I know this is super hard because you read a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
what are some of your favorite books? It could just be based off like them, like the books offering a different perspective to
Yeah.
your life, or you just really enjoyed the books. But what would most top 5 book recommend?
It changes quite a lot, to be fair. But I think some that I've read and I can't, just because of the ease of reading and the fact that they've challenged my thoughts or how I approach life. Definitely Atomic Habits. That's number one for me of all time, just because it's so easy to read and it's so actionable and tangible. There's so many things you can take away. So definitely Atomic Habits is number one. Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. Very, very good book. It really allows you to understand why you behave the way you behave and how to like unleash your full potential. The 5 Second Rule by Mel. I can't remember her name. I'm sorry.
I'll put in the
she's
description box.
fantastic author. If you don't want to read her book, her TED talk kind of covers most of it. But it's it's about, again, something very tangible that you can take away and just implement into your day-to-day life, and it really does. There's millions of testimonials like to vouch that it works. I think it's difficult to remember
You've got
the
2
rest.
left,
Yeah,
so make it count.
make it count. Um, The Art of Thinking Clearly. I can't remember who wrote the book either, but I remember that was such a good read. Again, very, very easy to read. I try and not like read difficult books except the next one that I'm going to list. But because I think if you can make a concept easy to digest, that makes you a better author. Obviously, there are certain things that aren't necessarily easy to digest.
Too complex.
They're too complex and they have to be said a certain way. But yeah, that or Thinking Fast and Slow. That's a really, really, really good book as well.
Who's it by? Do you remember?
Can't for the life of me remember.
It's
He
okay,
won a
that's
Nobel
okay.
Prize for it as well, if I'm not mistaken. But really good book. And it just talks about our different modes of thinking and like how we can understand each of those. Start with Why. That's also a really good book, Simon Sinek.
Okay.
But those top 5, really, really recommend.
I'll definitely look into that as well. I trust your opinion. I trust your judgment. So I'll be adding them to my Amazon wish list. The last S from Savers is scribing.
Scribing, yes. So, like I said earlier, if you can't affirm out loud or if you can't look yourself in the mirror and talk to yourself, scribing is so important. And sometimes so the order in which I do savers changes. It doesn't always go in exactly that way, just because sometimes I want to exercise a bit later, or you want to scribe first. So especially if I wake up with a full head, like with just a head full of thoughts, before I do my meditation, I'd like to get my thoughts out on paper, just because thoughts can't exist in 2 places.
True. Do you write a lot, like in general?
Yeah, so I'm currently writing a book.
Really? Oh my gosh, what is it going to be about?
You'll find out.
Oh,
It's going to be about a lot of what we spoke about in this conversation, but just
I'm
more
so happy for you. I cannot wait to order it.
So yeah, no, you can get a copy free, don't you
Hey!
worry. Yeah, so I think I try and get my thoughts out on paper just so they're not in my head. So by the time I come to meditate, I can focus a bit more on my breathing and focus a bit more on like less on the passing thoughts and more on the actual benefits of meditation. But if I do leave like scribing to the end, obviously you're writing your to-do list, you're planning your day. Once things are out on paper, they take up less mental space as well. And I feel like once you like have them thoughts out, and sometimes you don't. There's obviously like journals that have cues or questions that
like
ask you
prompts for
to,
you
yeah,
to,
prompts, exactly. Sometimes I don't personally have any of them, so when I have nothing to write about, I would literally start by putting my pen to paper and say, I have nothing to write, but today I am feeling. And then
That's
something will
amazing.
come, the thoughts will flow, and eventually, after I've emptied all my thoughts out, I can then start focusing on my to-do list if I haven't written it from the night before. How today's gone again, if it hasn't have like how yesterday went, sorry, if I didn't write it from the night before. So I try and journal in the morning and in the evening, just because, again, before you go to sleep, you really want to get rid of those thoughts out of your head. So, and then once they're on a piece of paper, they're like there's something else's problem now, they're not in your head, and you can get a peaceful sleep. But I think writing is so important. And like, people go therapy, people have friends that they talk to, but there's so many things that you can't really talk about, or you can't bring yourself to talk about, or there's no one that quite understands so many different things. And you will understand, like, that's the thing. So you will always understand yourself, and if you don't understand yourself, you can question yourself and talk to yourself and come to that conclusion yourself. There's like, not everything needs to be said, and there's certain things you can take to the grave, and I feel like writing them down allows you to take it to the grave with yourself. Scribing is so important.
Facts. And I'm laughing because literally when you just said something if you take it to the grave, I was telling my friend this the other day because she was just talking to me about a completely different situation, how she was feeling guilty about not saying something that was personal. And I had to remind her that sometimes you just have to keep things to yourself.
Of course.
Especially if it's not doesn't make a difference into the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really believe that having that personal privacy as well,
Yeah.
it reflects in other aspects of your life, and I think that's super important because it can also show the trust you have in yourself, and
Yeah.
that means of just introspection sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It just ties into each other.
Yeah.
But to piggyback off what you said about scribing, I want to just tell the listeners a little bit about something I practiced, and I have a YouTube video about this that I made almost over a year ago now, and it's called scripting, which is a form of manifestation as well. And the way I script is I start off by saying, "Dear God, thank you for blessing me with da 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 and everything I want." And I promise you, in my final year of uni, I remember sitting in my uni apartment and I would literally script everything I wanted down to like the degree I wanted. Like, I was obviously studying for my final degree, but the grade I wanted as well. I said I wanted to find a job within less than a year. I did that. I said I wanted to spend some time traveling. I did that. And I literally, even down to the emotions I wanted my parents to feel on graduation day, I wrote every single thing down. And it's crazy because it was now only until a couple weeks ago, I was just reading back into that journal because I was looking for something else I wrote in there. And I was like, wow, this really came to pass. And it's not the first time I've practiced scripting as a form of manifestation, but this wasn't that long ago. This was literally just a year ago, Yeah, because my 12 months is coming up at my job. But yeah, I really, really, really recommend that to people as well. And again, you can always go back and see where you were at as well, and even what you wanted at that time. And it's also a confidence boost as well because it's sure that, wow, I did this, I put my mind to it, I worked hard on this, and I'm achieving everything I
Exactly. Yeah.
aspired. So
It sometimes serves to show you how small you were thinking as well. Sometimes, like, once I got the most recent job I had um, I looked at my previous like entries, and it was like, oh, I really wanted, this kind of corporate role, and I was like, that's not what I wanted. And sometimes you don't know, you don't know until you've actually got it. But like that job was an answered prayer, and then soon after I realized, okay, cool, God has answered my prayer, but that wasn't what I wanted. It's probably what I needed to then know that I don't want it. But yeah, I think being able to talk to yourself serves as the foundation of boundaries in general. Like, if you can't keep things to yourself because you feel bad about telling other people things, it means you can't set boundaries. And I think boundaries are so important.
definitely. So you're running a marathon
Yes.
in a week now,
A
or
week,
a
exactly.
week?
Yeah, a week today.
Talk me through that. How's the prep been? How did this come about? What have you learned from this process? Like, talk me through everything.
So for me, and I don't want this to sound bad anymore. I'm super confident regarding the marathon.
Period.
I've done all the prep. I've done all the work that needs to be done. Again, I followed the map, and I've gotten to where I've gotten to now. So I have no doubt, should things go, right on the day, or should nothing happen, touch wood, over the next week, that the marathon will be an absolute fine day. How it came about, again, marathon was not something that I ever thought I'd do. Running is not something that I ever thought I'd do.
That is huge, by the way, Mo, because you're sitting opposite me, just like,
I know it sounds super nonchalant and super casual now, but it's like the idea of a marathon, had you spoken to me 2 years ago, would be unbelievable. Like, I would never have thought I could even run like 10 minutes, let alone like 42 kilometers.
So I have some hope.
So yeah, no, there's hope. I genuinely think like everyone can, if they put their mind to it. I am privileged to know that I'm not coming from no running to now running a marathon. I've been running for 2 years now. It's not easy, but it's worth it. And I don't think anything that is easy is worth it. I think everything in life has to come with pain, and everything will come with pain. There's you get pain of doing something, you get pain of not doing something, you get pain of living your best self, and you get pain of being mediocre. Like, for me, mediocrity is more painful than the pain of trusting myself to do the work that it takes to become successful. I think a lot of people don't want to be successful, or they say they want to be successful but won't do the work because ultimately they think success comes at too high a price. They think success comes with so much work that they're not going to be able to handle. But being mediocre comes with more work. I think being mediocre and having to live in that regret is so much harder than the work that you're going to have to put in to be succcessful.
That is a new perspective that no one's ever said to me. I love that.
Yeah,
Can you say that again?
Sorry. I'll rephrase it in Tim Grover's words. He said this on one of the podcasts I was listening to recently. He said that if you think the price of success is high, wait until you get the bill for mediocrity, or something along those lines.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, yeah, facts. It's not. It costs so much more to be average. In terms of just the way you're living. The cost of living is just showing us that we need to make money. Yeah. And you can't be okay with a small amount of money. Don't get me wrong, money isn't the be all and end all, but you can't be okay with living an average life. You can't be okay with constantly letting yourself down. Like, that hurts and costs so much more than the work that comes with being successful.
Especially if you're in a capitalist society as well.
Oh, 100%.
I don't even think it should be a choice anymore. I think you should naturally be motivated by this society that we're in, because unless you're really trying to dismantle capitalism and everything it stands for, I just think there is a certain level of drive and discipline you have, especially now more than ever. I don't know, maybe because I'm getting older and I'm seeing the world differently, and I'm like, oh, this is not a game. Like, this is not just peaches and roses.
The thing is, it can be, and I think a lot of people define success so unreasonably in the beginning that it puts you off. It gets you into the all or nothing mentality. It's like, if I can't do this, then I'm not going to do anything. And it's if you can't do it all, do something. And I think the barrier of entry is so high now, when you should try and make it, like, this is why I love Atomic Habits as well. It's about that incremental improvement, getting 1% better every day, because you don't have to get £100,000 today, or again, depends on where or how you define success. But you don't have to do it all today. You just have to do the bare minimum today and do the bare minimum more tomorrow. And over time, because things take time, good things take time, and good things take deliberate, intentional, consistent practice. It's not something that comes easy. And I've been training for 6, 7, 8 years now. I've been running for 2. 5, 6 weeks ago is when I got a job that allowed me to leave a corporate role. 6 years after I first started training, 2 years after I first started running. Like, it didn't come to me straight away. cool, I know it looks like me and you had this conversation 2 months ago or three
Oh
months ago, and
no,
I said
but
I wanted
that's
to do it.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
wouldn't be in the position I was if I didn't start the gym 6 years ago.
hundred
I wouldn't
percent.
be, and I got no return on my investment in the gym until that financial return. Obviously, I got physical health benefits from it. But when it came to financial return in the industry, because I knew I wanted to work in the industry, when it came to financial return, I didn't have my first client when it came to personal training until like last year. Again, six
Really?
years after training.
Wow.
So it's not something that comes immediately, but
Yeah.
it's something that if you want it
Bad
bad
enough.
enough, and I hate that term, but if you
No,
want it
but
bad
it's
enough,
true. It's true.
you really have to understand that things take anything that you think is going to happen, double the time,
Yeah.
and then after that see where you're at, and then if not, double the time again, and after that see where you're at. And if it's something that you genuinely enjoy, whether you're making money from it or not, it's something that I'll do. Like I was going to the gym again, six
Anyway,
years with
yeah.
no return on investment, um financially, and I still went.
Love that. I really want to talk about some of the charitable work you've done
Hmm.
and your company. Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that. And I also love that it's inspired by movement. I thought that
Hmm.
was really cool.
Yeah.
And so many things came into my mind. Like the creative in me was like, oh my god, you could do this and this and this and this. But I really want you to elaborate on that and also talk about some of the charities or causes that you are currently supporting because I didn't even know this about you until I was
Yeah.
when I wanted this. Yeah.
So Vertex 33, it was originally called Run for Yemen. This is where we started. So, and this is what's so mad, just going back to the marathon point, if I didn't do Run for Yemen, I wouldn't have the spot in the marathon. It's almost impossible to get a marathon spot because unless you're running for a specific charity or a cause, you have to go by ballot, and it's so many people enter the ballot, you rarely get an entry. We were gifted our spots because of the work that we done for the half
Yemen.
marathon, and the work we done for the half marathon came because we started Vertex. Vertex started because we started Run for Yemen. This is, and like these things, when I started Run for Yemen, it never, you can piece the piece it, like you can piece it going backwards, but life can only be experienced forwards, but only be understood looking back. And I think we started Run for Yemen because pandemic was happening. Obviously, there were so many bad things happening in the world. We were all running regardless. So me and a group of friends just started running regularly because there was nothing else to do. Like we needed to get our 1 hour of mandatory exercise, and we were running. And I came up with the concept because I said, guys, we're literally running for no reason, or we're running obviously to support each other, but there's so much pain in the world. Like let's put our miles to good use. People will. I was sort of inspired from the Virgin Run 5, Tag 5, Donate 5
Okay. Yeah.
situation. I was like, let's make our own thing. So we did. We started Run for Yemen, and within literally like 8 hours, we had 20 runners sign up for it. And after 20 runners, our first goal was to like raise £100. We touched £1,000 before the evening, so it was literally like from 4 p.m. till 10 p.m. We were trying to raise a little amount of money. We raised 1,000. We're like, okay, cool. After that, 20 cyclists wanted to jump into the Run for Yemen situation, so we had that. We started the Instagram page. We ended up raising like over £9,000 for Yemen within the space of a month. And it was a concept that we wanted to run with. We're like, we really have something here, pardon the pun. We really have something here, and I think we can develop this further. We then had to reassess and look back at it, and it was like, okay, cool, we have run, we have Yemen. What could we do? We have more. There's so many more causes in the world. Like it's not. We can't just commit to one. And running is so like not exclusive, but it kind of rules anything else out. Obviously, we had cyclists as well, but in the name it was Run for Yemen. We're like, we need to rebrand. We need to
Yeah.
look at it from not a business perspective, but a perspective where we can, grow this further. So we took out the run, we took out Yemen, and we're like, we wanted to do movement for a cause. Like there had to be our underlying reasoning behind it was to raise either money, awareness, or just like financial aid to causes, not one specific cause and not one specific avenue or means to create that. So Vertex was then created. And Vertex was myself and my co-founders Kiko and Zach, and we then took Vertex to be a movement of like a celebration of any sort of movement. So be that running, cycling, yoga, just breathing, so many other things that you can do to then ultimately raise money for a cause. Myself, Kiko, and Zach, we continued running because that's what we do, and that's how we then got the opportunity to design, because they're designers. That's how they got the opportunity to design the like finisher medal and T-shirt for the half marathon, which then gave us our marathon spots. Which again we used that as an opportunity to then raise more money. But Vertex itself stands to raise money or awareness for causes through movement. Eventually, we want to run events with it as well, like our own events, where people can come, they can do different kind of things, they can leave feeling better, both physically, mentally, and spiritually, and they can use that event. The event will be used to, of course, raise money for these causes. But there's so many causes in the world. We're not going to run out of causes, and there's so many. It becomes difficult to choose one specific one. At the moment, of course, we're running for Pakistan because they're kind of in the limelight at the moment for it. But ultimately, what we want is people to come to these spaces, be able to take something away from them, both physically, mentally, and spiritually, and then out of their charitable nature, give something back because of that. It's a non-profit. We don't make any money from them, so it's like that's where Vertex came about from, and that's the mission that we have.
That's really admirable. So your co-founders, are they your friends or did you meet them through the Run
So I met them
Society?
through, yeah. So of course they're my friends now. I met them through a run club that we all used to attend as well, and it was through there that we met, and then through Vertex we obviously got a lot closer, and we found that our goals and our morals, which I think is more important than our goals, aligned. And just working with people that kind of share your nature as a human, it makes life so much easier because we all understand our mission statement, we all understand our why, and we all want the same thing, and it's never for us. Like I don't think it's always beyond us, and
Yeah.
I think understanding that allows us to then think huge, and knowing that it's not about the money, but the money definitely helps these causes. But I know that money is like a small dent, but it's better than nothing, and that's where we sit currently.
Wow, that was really, really good. I like to always ask my guests these
Hmm.
four questions because my podcast was really inspired by the Japanese concept, which translates to reason for being. So the four questions are four parts in a Venn diagram, and the idea behind this is that when you answer these questions, they can. I don't know if you've heard about this concept.
It's on the logo.
Ooh, pay attention. A lot of people don't know that. Only one other person has pointed that out to me.
What, the ikigai? Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I saw it in your Venn diagram logo. I was like, yep, I've seen it.
Oh wow. I love that you noticed that because yeah, not many, literally only one other person has said that to me. But anyway, the idea behind this Venn diagram is when you answer these questions,
Hmm.
leads you to your purpose. And your purpose, of course, differs from person to person, but doesn't necessarily mean this is going to be your purpose 10 years from now.
Hmm.
So today, what does Mo love?
Movement.
What is Mo good at?
Currently, gym and running. I'm making people laugh.
What can Mo be paid for?
All of the above,
I
honestly.
know that's right. And what do you think the world needs?
I think the world needs more love. I don't think I think people aren't kind to each other the way we used to be. I think everyone out of desperation has lost community, and I think that's something that was so big in our parents' generation, and that's because they had money left over, and it's not just about the money, but as in like they had a means to sustain themselves and then more to sustain the community, and I think it is being like sucked out of us, like the life and the community and understanding, and just the instant access to people means that we don't have that longing for anyone anymore. We have no desire to maintain relationships because I know you're okay if I just check on your story, or I know you're okay if I see you living your best life. But that you're putting up your highlights the same way I'm putting up my highlights. I don't know how well you're doing. I need to actually physically go out of my. I
Check
say
in,
go out
yeah.
of my way. It's not going out of my way. I need to. It's my duty as a friend, and as a person that's in your life to build genuine connection with you, and that can't be done for a screen. So we need more love and we need more community.
I'm smiling. If you're watching the visuals, you can see me smiling from ear to ear, but I'm smiling because I'm so happy and this was so good. I
Thank you
think
so
this is just the
much.
perfect ending for this podcast. Thank you so, so, so much, Mo.
Thank you, Araya. Thank you.
You
Honestly,
are
absolute pleasure being on
amazing,
here. So thank you.
honestly. Yeah, I just can't wait for people to hear this. I'm like so excited.
Thank
You
you.
can see I'm smiling so hard. But yeah, I'm really happy. Thank you so much again.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Araya. Wow.
Let's clap for ourselves.
Now I'll clap for you. Honestly,
Oh.
oh my god, it's a very intense line of questioning, but I'm
Oh my
so
God, how was
glad. No, that was such a genuinely beautiful conversation. Like I
love
really enjoyed it, and
that.
you made me think a lot, and I like thinking, and you know, I felt like I learned so much as well from you and your. I think your parents were away from you when you went. I I know you went boarding school, but it doesn't cross your mind that
Yeah, they
you're
just
actually
think,
living alone.
yeah. Yeah.
And you know, I love that you touched on like constantly questioning yourself because we
Yeah.
can't just live off of vibes. You can, but you can't. Like you
You
can't.
actually can't, especially if you want more for yourself.
Of course,
You
and I
can't.
think people forget that there's so much more to life, but because we're we're drilled into us that it isn't.
Like
Yeah.
literally so stuck in that routine or
Yeah.
just yeah, taking everything
Yeah.
just not questioning
No,
it. If
for
you do
sure.
want more for yourself.
But honestly, it was such a yeah. I feel like peace. You know,
Oh,
I've
I
just
love,
had such
oh
a
my
beautiful
God.
conversation,
I
and
love
I really
that.
enjoyed that.
I really love that.
Um,
Sorry, I'm so cold.
Cold. So sorry. We can turn off the aircon.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
But yeah,
But
it was.
yeah,
I
I'm
just.
really happy you enjoyed it.
Oh,
I enjoyed
thank you.
it too.
Yeah, I really did. I honestly did. I hope your followers and listeners enjoy it as well.
They
'Cause-
will.
Yeah. No,
They
I
like
sure
me, they're
hope
gonna
so.
like me.
Yeah. No.
Like, yeah, I
But-
think so. And I think there's so many nuggets of wisdom.
Mm.
Because usually I do this thing where after every conversation, recommendations, I know my
Yeah.
guest reads books. I feel like there's so much. I don't even know. I'm probably gonna have to do like 2 sets. There's so much that could be broken down, but
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm happy that you're happy, and I am also very happy. So it worked out. Thank you.